No losses, I don't do lipo. A few screws loose in the head, I'm a psycho. Promise you the bar, just as real as the bite though. Misunderstood, you could call me a typo. I shine hotter than the stars in the night though. Hate the who's, don't give me a title. Flipping an asset, so I don't worry the price though. Got scratched like mine, no, leave it to the tribal.
Boom, I'm like a bomb in a room. Blow up the spot, everybody gotta move. Life or death, everybody gotta choose. Life or death, not everybody gotta lose. I hear the talking, I just keep quiet. Learn to speak silent, don't yearn for violence. Popping like a man.
Be careful not to get too close, I might just go.
Welcome back for day 2 of the largest online advertising event of the year. Welcome back to AdWork. Today is gonna be our biggest day yet. It's jam-packed. We have speakers like Seth Godin, Craig Clements, Neil Ali, Pat Flynn. It's gonna be amazing. And also, don't forget to do business by heading over to the marketplace. Make new friends and chat to old ones. You'll find them in the directory. And of course, we have our perks page. So make sure to grab all the freebies there. This is gonna be awesome. I can't wait. Welcome back for day 2. This is AdWorld. So how do you optimize your performance campaigns? Well, I used to do it based on ROAS and ROAS alone. Brittany is here to tell us that this might not be the best way of handling things anymore nowadays. Attribution becomes more and more of an issue. And so she will introduce us to different kind of measurement metrics that you should put in place to know how well you're doing in your campaigns. This is gonna be interesting. I got my pencil ready to make some notes and then get things into action right after your talk. Welcome to AdWorld. The stage is yours, Brittany.
Hello, and welcome to the session on how to break your reliance on return on ad spend, or ROAS, for paid search campaigns. I'm Brittany Blanchard, Vice President of Client Services with Metric Theory, a performance digital marketing agency that recently merged with Mighty Hive and S4 Capital. We help our clients build a full funnel growth engine across paid search, paid social, programmatic media, and emerging ad channels, all rooted in proven results. I've spent the past 8 years overseeing service delivery and client retention for hundreds of advertisers. With a background originally in economics and math, I'm also especially passionate about the measurability of paid media efforts, which is, of course, what we're here to talk about today. One of the most exciting things about paid search is being able to see the conversions and revenue generated by your campaigns down to the keyword and audience level. That is actually what drew me to digital marketing as a career in the first place, just being able to see the actual data and the impact that you're having when you launch those keywords and ads. However, this focus on that data can lead to tunnel vision, overemphasizing the metrics you can see, and sometimes ignoring what we intuitively know about marketing. In addition, there's a lot of buzz right now in digital marketing about limitations to this data and increasing challenges to measuring performance. Digital marketers today need to know how to use the data available to them while understanding and accounting for the non-measurable impacts of advertising campaigns, and not being too heavily reliant on ROAS and other metrics that we've all grown very comfortable with. So let's talk about some of these complicating factors. Conversion metrics have always been imperfect. That's always been the case, but it has been exacerbated over the past several years. So for example, one thing that we've seen more and more often is cross-device purchases, when somebody interacts with an ad on their mobile device and then ultimately goes and purchases on their desktop or on their laptop. That is not actually something that we've ever been able to track well. Additionally, there are increasingly long paths to purchase. We see that more and more consumers want to get to know a brand really well, want to do more research. Perhaps they'll take weeks to make a decision on a product that previously took only days to decide on a purchase. There's also GDPR and CCPA, some of the legislation coming out around privacy and what we are and are not allowed to track on the internet. And of course, iOS 14 and some of the updates to browsers and what people are asked to opt into or opt out of on their devices. The impact really can clearly be seen on paid social, for example, where we've seen historically the cross-device impact most strongly. So if you were looking at ROAS metrics in Google Analytics for Facebook versus for Google Ads, you're going to see much worse performance on Facebook. The reason for that is because most people are viewing Facebook and therefore Facebook advertisements on their mobile device. But we know, although it is declining over time, more people are comfortable making purchases on their laptop or desktop devices, maybe while they're at work, maybe while they have their wallet nearby. So you aren't able to track that ultimate purchase back to the Facebook ad that was viewed on their mobile device. So if you're looking at that performance in Google Analytics, you might end up cutting budgets on Facebook because you see a much lower ROAS than you do for your Google ads. But that lower ROAS doesn't necessarily mean your ads aren't working. Now, the privacy movement in particular is impacting our visibility into metrics that we're used to evaluating. So iPhone users now are asked to opt in to providing their data to advertisers. One recent poll showed over 60% of users were planning to say do not track when prompted to opt in or opt out. However, the most important thing to remember is that these metrics have never been perfect. They have never been completely flawless, and that is only being exacerbated by everything we just talked about here. That said, the metrics are still useful and worth being thoughtful about. I want to have some brief commentary on the deprecation of third-party cookies in particular. So for anyone who doesn't know, Google announced that they will stop supporting third-party cookies by 2022. And this is an announcement that kind of shook up the digital marketing world. The good news is that Google and Facebook and companies like them make far too much money off of advertising to just let our targeting options disappear. What they need to do is just balance the relevance that marketers have come to expect with increasing privacy requirements. So it is a little bit of a give and take, but there are several systems in the works to replace cookies. One you might have heard of is called FLoC, which stands for the Federated Learning of Cohorts. I won't go into all of the details. If you're either really technical or really get excited by this kind of thing, I highly recommend looking into it. It is really interesting. But at a high level, FLoC combines data privacy with machine learning technology to group users based on their interests and online behaviors, allowing for the continuation of specific audience targeting. So essentially, instead of cookieing people and having all of that specific data on what an individual did, they're using machine learning to group people in similar ways. All of the systems that are currently being explored are just looking for ways to allow us as marketers to continue to target ads to our key audiences long after cookies are gone. So with FLoC in particular, Google claims that it will still generate 95% of the conversion volume that we see today with cookies. Marketers, of course, are guessing it will be quite a bit less accurate. So essentially what this means is once we've moved away from cookies and we're using something like FLoC or a similar system, the numbers can be off by a pretty significant portion. I think marketers have often treated conversion data as the absolute truth. In reality, it's been an estimate all along, and it's going to continue to be an estimate. It's just becoming all the more obvious now how much of an estimate it is as we embark on this years-long evolution of what personalization will look like for digital ads in the future. But for now, we do still have cookies, even if the cookie windows in which we can see conversions is shortening. So I want to talk a little bit about attribution models and what attribution model you should use for your conversion data. So for our purposes, let's just focus on Google Ads here. So let's take an example. Some of you may be familiar with the brand Bombas, who makes socks. So if someone has never heard of Bombas before, they don't just wake up and decide to search for Bombas in Google, right? Something needs to point them in that direction. So let's say, for example, we have a hypothetical person. They're browsing the internet and they see a display ad for Bombas socks. That display ad reminds them that they had a friend who was raving about his new Bombas socks the other day. Then perhaps he forgets about it, moves on with his life. A few weeks later, there's a hole in his sock, and he thinks to himself, oh, what was that sock brand my friend was telling me about? And then he searches high-quality socks on Google, sees a Bombas ad, and clicks on it. And then he gets distracted. A few days later, he searches for Bombas and makes his first sock purchase. So if that was the path to purchase for this hypothetical customer, if we were using a last click attribution model, we would only see that search on Bombas leading to the conversion. We wouldn't see any credit for anything else, that non-brand search that came before it, the display ad that came before it. So generally speaking, when it comes to attribution models, I'm a fan of any model that distributes conversion credit across multiple touch points. And in particular, with the advances of machine learning and algorithms coming from Google, I personally favor data-driven attribution, which is available in Google Ads, and it distributes credit for a conversion based on your own account's conversion data. So it looks at the folks that click on your ads and purchase, and those that click on your ads and don't purchase, and then uses that data to estimate the actual contribution of each ad interaction across the conversion path. So yes, it is a little bit of a black box, but it definitely gives credit to multiple touch points along the path to conversion, and it's becoming smarter and smarter over time. If for whatever reason that's not an option or not a model that you're comfortable with, then my second choice would be position-based attribution. This gives 40% of the conversion credit to the first click and the last click, and then distributes the remaining 20% among any clicks in between. The only two models I really don't like are first click and last click. Essentially, with those models, you're limiting what you know about a conversion to a single click. That all said, I do have some bad news for you about attribution models. They're all wrong, all of them. So let's think for a second about our Bombas example. The Google display ad that our searcher saw, maybe they didn't click on it, so maybe it isn't being tracked at all. Google's data-driven attribution that I just said is my preferred attribution model at the moment, currently doesn't apply to display or YouTube campaigns, though that may be changing. So we wouldn't see any credit for that Google display ad in that case. Regardless, we definitely are not capturing the word of mouth from our searcher's friend that started it all. One thing that's interesting is even the expensive attribution softwares are still wrong. They cost a lot of money and they can give you more insight, but they're still not correct. Many can track impressions from display and video campaigns, but not paid social channels. So if someone viewed a display ad and a paid social ad before clicking on a search ad and ultimately converting on your site, display might get some credit in that attribution platform, but paid social still wouldn't. So some of those platforms can give more insight than, say, last non-direct click attribution in Google Analytics, but it's still not correct. The good news is it can still be useful. This is one of the most foundational principles in statistics, the notion that all models are wrong, but some are useful. So think about that for a second. All models are wrong. By definition, a model is attempting to generalize behavior based on assumptions or based on sampled data. So as a marketer, you want to understand how consumers end up on your site and then purchase your product. But no model is going to be able to tell you that our searcher heard about Bombas from his friend. No model is going to tell you how an Instagram influencer might have worn down a customer over months of posts before they finally searched for your brand and converted. So the question is not how accurate the model you're using is, but whether it helps you to make better decisions than you would without it. Ultimately, is the model useful? Okay, so at this point we've established that performance data has always been imperfect, it's getting more imperfect, and all attribution models are wrong. Great, I'm sounding like such a ray of sunshine. So we can move on to how to actually measure performance. And practically speaking, how do you measure that impact of your paid search campaigns? There are three primary ways I like to measure performance aside from the directly attributable metrics like ROAS that you can see in the ad platforms. So the first one might seem too obvious, but in my experience, it's certainly underutilized. So the first way to measure is to look at what's happening with your overall site performance relative to your overall paid media investment. So one thing that I like to point out, a CMO from one of our top luxury e-commerce clients recently said, blended ROAS is not the worst metric. Yet marketers love to shy away from it. And I agree with him. I think blended ROAS is a fantastic metric that you should be looking at on a regular basis. Here, I think common sense plays a role. If you launch well-targeted marketing campaigns with strong creative, you should see conversions on your site start to increase, regardless of whether you see those attributed back to the new campaigns in whatever platform you're using or not. You know that you launched targeted ads, you would expect to see impact on purchases or conversions. So this is a great metric to be tracking over time and to really look at the correlation between your spend or investment and what you're seeing for your site or your company overall. The second is directional metrics, and I think a lot of people underestimate the value of directional metrics. Especially if you're reporting to leadership at your company on the paid media campaigns that you're running, being able to tell a story with directional metrics can be a really effective way to showcase the impact of those campaigns. So we all know that the goal of any marketing is to reach the right audience at the right time with the right message and offer. That's going to be a good marketing campaign. So what you can do with these directional metrics is demonstrate how you're doing this. So for example, if you work for a B2B SaaS company and you have a target account list that you want to sell into, what you can do is show leadership the number of impressions of a given ad that you might be showing to C-level execs at those target companies on LinkedIn. That's going to be exciting. If you can show, we showed this number of executives at our target companies this ad, that's going to be really interesting and some of that common sense marketing that I think is sometimes missing. Some of the other metrics that are really great to look at are time on site or pages per visit, which show engagement with your content, brand search volume or direct and organic site traffic, which would show an increase in awareness if you have more people searching for your brand or more people coming directly to your site. That may be the impact of some of the new campaigns you've launched. And then finally, impressions or click volume overall show reach. And it's helpful to show how many people are seeing your ads and on what platforms. Finally, the third way to measure performance is with testing and experimentation. In my experience, experiments are woefully underused in digital marketing, and I think that most often this is due to a low risk tolerance. Quite frankly, advertisers are scared to put leads or revenue on the line in order to test a hypothesis, especially if you have lead or revenue goals that you need to hit. However, you need to be willing to take risks if you're going to learn and unlock new growth for your company. So one example that advertisers ask me relatively frequently is whether they really need to be spending money on clicks on their brand ads. When someone is looking for your brand, do I really need to pay for clicks? Won't they just scroll down past my competitors' ads and click on my organic listing? The answer is that it depends. It depends on your competition, it depends on your customers, and it depends on the power of your brand. Really, the only way to know for sure is to test turning off brand ads and then see what happens. A lot of advertisers are understandably scared to test that since they may lose conversions or purchases. However, I think it's important if you want to answer that question and see if you can unlock that budget you're currently spending on brand ads to spend on non-brand or other top of funnel campaigns, then you need to do a test. So with any test, generally speaking, what you need to do is define a control audience and a test audience. I think one of the simplest ways to do this in performance marketing is defining treatments based on geography, whether you're doing DMAs or state. Sometimes that might not work for various reasons, so you could do a period over period evaluation and then use what's happening to your non-brand campaigns or to overall site performance as the control to estimate how much of the impact that you measure is actually due to the change in treatment versus due to other external factors. So ultimately, when it comes to the principles of testing, I think the single most important thing is to do it. Just test. So that's step number one. And then secondly, it's really important to know how you're going to measure the test and get buy-in from anybody that is invested in the results of this test ahead of time. So agree to what you're going to measure and how you will gauge success. Next, you need to give it enough time. This is a frequent mistake, and it does take a lot of patience. As we saw with our Bombas example earlier, most conversions don't happen immediately. We talked about that increasing path to purchase over the last several years. Consumers like to think about things. There's not really a sense of urgency, especially with higher ticket items or with B2B leads. So if you change something in your marketing, it will likely take several weeks to several months to see an impact. You can use some of the reports available to you in Google Ads, like the path to conversion report, to understand how long that lag time might be for your brand, and then set a time frame for your experiment to make sure that you're giving it enough time to see the results. And then finally, make sure you're spending enough to see an impact. If you normally spend $100,000 a month on paid search and you want to do a test of paid social, if you spend $5,000 a month on paid social, it's going to be very difficult to see any impact from that new channel because it's a drop in the bucket compared to what you're already spending on paid search. So the more you're willing to put into a test, the more likely you are to be able to see the results that you're looking for. This is exactly why, if you've ever run a YouTube lift test with Google, for example, they require a minimum spend over a set number of weeks. They need to have enough volume to really be able to measure the impact of that spend. Overall, there's a lot of talk in performance marketing these days about what the privacy movement is going to mean for measurability, how we can prepare for the coming changes, and what this is going to mean for performance marketing overall. The good thing is it is not the end of the world. We haven't had perfect data for a very long time. ROAS and other metrics that you can see in Google Analytics or in ad platforms are fantastic. You just can't be overly reliant on it, or you may make bad decisions for your company. What you can do is make sure that you're investing in first-party data strategy. We didn't talk a lot about this today. I think you can read about it. Other sessions might talk about it. But having first-party data is going to become ever more important as third-party cookies go away. Next, don't overthink it. All models are wrong, like we talked about, and you know intuitively what works from a marketing perspective. So, for example, if you sell organic cotton socks, and someone searches for organic cotton socks on Google, that's a highly engaged searcher looking for a very specific product that you offer. You want to be there, and you don't need performance metrics to tell you that. Then also use other metrics to be able to support your performance, not just ROAS. ROAS and CPA metrics are great. They can still tell you which keywords are performing better relative to other keywords, and they can give you a sense for trending performance over time. But using some of those other directional metrics can really help to tell the story of the impact that your performance campaigns are having overall. Next, be bold in testing and experimentation. This is really the key to understanding how your marketing campaigns are performing as we start to see less and less of that directly attributable performance for various reasons. So really understanding how your organization can test, giving yourself enough time and investing enough money in those tests is going to unlock learnings that will help you take your performance marketing to the next level. And above all, common sense. We're marketers and we're marketing to people. If I can have an Instagram ad in front of my target audience that takes up 100% of the screen on their mobile device, I know that that's valuable, regardless of the ROAS metrics I might see on that ad. I think this is simultaneously freeing and a little bit scary for performance marketers, and especially for CFOs or anybody else that is really trying to tie that performance back to the investment. But I think breaking that reliance on the metrics that we've become really used to over the past decade plus isn't such a bad thing and will enable us to get back to truly good marketing, getting in front of the right people at the right time with the right message. I'm Brittany Blanchard of Metric Theory. Best of luck navigating the future of performance marketing measurement. I promise it is not as scary as it might sound, and we will continue to have plenty of data to guide our paid media strategies, even if that data looks a little different than it used to. Thank you.